Hi guys, my name is Coach Rafa. I'm in one more Coach podcast today with Ali Simmons, a guy that I met when I was playing at UCL my last year, and he came there to coach. Luckily or not, I think was not lucky. I think it was really hard work. He ended up winning the national championship. Next year, he transferred, won the national championship with Barry, and now he's playing for he's coaching for a really nice D1 powerhouse, Hidden Hall, and he got staff of the year in 2017, 18, and he's gonna tell his story and share a lot of ideas and concepts that I want to know. But he's a guy that I have a lot of respect, and a guy that now as a coach, when I was a player I didn't understand, but when I was UC, I see how athlete-centered philosophy he applies, and he's really close to the players, and he always make the players on a positive environment, and the players want to be around him. And now as a coach, understand more. He did that. So I did it. I don't know if I introduced you well, but you can introduce yourself to the people as well, Ali.
Rafa, you can introduce me like that anytime you want, pal. Yeah, thank you for having me, mate. Yeah, great to be here. Ali Simmons, as Rafa said, I'm at Seton Hall University, which is 9 miles outside of Manhattan, which usually is a very desirable place to be. Maybe not so over the last couple of months, but yeah, thanks for having me, mate.
Okay, man. I just want to start telling you how you start playing soccer and how was your as a player in England. How was there?
Yeah, I mean, started playing when I was little. Played for local teams. Ended up playing Southampton for a little bit. Then, tried at Southampton, tried at Bournemouth, and then played Bournemouth till I was about 16. I was very lucky that my parents were very focused on education as well. It was very much a matter of, although I can't put my hand on heart and said that I was putting the same amount of effort into my academics as I was to the football, I still kept up with it. We kind of came up with a decision that if I didn't get offered a good enough offer at 16, then I would go to college. And as you know, at 16, you can stop education in England. And then I carried on. And then when I was 18, I had good grades, and I was offered a academic scholarship, a full academic scholarship to go to Brunel University, which is just outside of West London. Yeah, so I played there. I mean, Bournemouth was great. Got to play with some really good players. Lucas Djukovic plays in the champ, Sam Vokes, Brett Pittman. That was all those latter two were in the youth team. And it was a tough club to be at because they brought in about 6 or 7 new players every single week. And what I really learned about myself is, first of all, mentally, I was not strong enough at that age, at 15, because you're watching these people come in and you're just looking at them going, do they play my position? They're there to, are they there to replace me? And it's like 6 months of that, of just every single training session. And honestly, mentally, I wasn't strong enough for it because I started to hide in games and I started to not want the ball because I knew that the coach would cut me if I lost the ball. So looking back at it, I mean, I didn't know that at the time, but looking back on it, that's exactly what it was. It wasn't good enough, and I definitely had the wrong mentality for it. And that hurt my love for the game for a while.
Yeah, I think it's great. Just pointed out how psychology has a huge impact on the game. And I have 2 questions. When you went to Brunel, you already are doing graduating focus in coaching. So when you went to the university already, you want to be a coach. How you grew up that desire, and what do you think you could have done different at the time to improve your mentality on the psychology side today as a coach? If it was the environment, or it's just a lot of pressure when you're in the academies and you need to perform, you know. In Brazil, it's the same way. A lot of players, they feel that. And I know what you're saying when you're afraid to do a mistake. So you do that thing.
Yeah, I went to university to get a degree, and then I was going to go into the Air Force as a pilot. That was the plan.
Okay.
So, and that's what I worked towards. And in the summers, I came out and did coaching and traveling around America, like 6 weeks in San Diego. The summer I came and did 12 weeks in Baltimore and up and down the East Coast. And that's actually when I started really coaching, like groups and summer camps, if you will. So actually coaching wasn't in the forefront of my mind. I finished the degree. I took the pilot's tests, and it was kind of during the recession, I believe, and they weren't taking on as many pilots for the Air Force. So it was kind of like pushed back a year. And in that year, I came and I worked in New Jersey for 9 months, not far away from where I am actually now, ironically. And that's when I got into coaching. I loved the education part was sports science coaching, but I definitely didn't think I was going to be a coach while I was doing that. I just enjoyed the psychological aspect and sport in general, really. I had a passion for it, as you do.
No, really good. Now, how you end up after all that, ended up on the United States? How was that? You made that transition. You were doing some summer camps.
Yeah.
You
Then
want
they
to go or?
me a longer position in New Jersey, and I went back, and then I went and worked in North Carolina for a year. I took a director of coaching position when I was about 23 at Seashore Soccer League, which is on the beach in Morehead City. Had a wonderful time there. Have friends there still now, which are great people. Learned a lot then. That's when I learned a lot, because there was 80 coaches, 1,000 players, and it was real pressure. That was the first time that I dealt with parents who were paying for their children to play, and when they lose or they had a bad game and their children would go home crying, I'd get a phone call. Why did you schedule this game? Like, my kid hates soccer. Like, it was one of the most stressful years of my life when I was 23, to be perfectly honest. And I probably shouldn't have been in that role if I'm looking back at that age. I don't think I was ready for it. I did the best I could, and I think it went as well as it possibly could. But looking back, that was a lot. Like, I needed a break. So after that, I was accepted to do a PhD in sports psychology at Birmingham. So I went back and I played at Brunel, as you mentioned, at university. And my old head coach said, "Do you want to come and coach the women's team?" Now, there was 4 people interviewing for the job. They interviewed all 4 of us, and I got the job with the women's team, which was a lot of fun. There was a lot of the other universities in that league. They're in the top league, were pro. Had some Arsenal players, some Chelsea players. We had a couple of good players as well. And that was my first taste. So I was like 24 and head coach of Brunel's women's team. And I was helping out as an assistant with the men under Neil Cumming, who I guess gave me my first real coaching opportunity at Brunel. And then fast forward a little bit, Neil moved to Wisconsin and took a role there. And then I transitioned in and I took the head coach job on the men's side at Brunel when I was 25, 26.
It's great. Crazy pace for 26. And so from there, you went to UC, or you had now there being the head coach?
I was the head coach there for 2 years. I was working actually for a sports analysis / betting company for 3 years before and while that was going on, which was really interesting. Gave me a completely different view of the game. They were dealing with like expected goals like 7-8 years ago. But the difference was they didn't publish their data. They kept it to use for betting, and they made millions and millions of pounds. And for me, I got to analyze. I think I watched about 3,000 games in 3 years. You're talking J2, the Indian League, like you name a league, I've watched a lot of games in that league. And
that's crazy.
That gave me a really good grounding. And basically they rate chances and the quality of chances. And I learned a lot more about how shot statistics can be very misleading. For example, if you have a one-on-one with the goalkeeper and the goalkeeper manages to hook and to kind of take the ball, that's not registered as a shot. But that's pretty much as good as an opportunity you're going to get in a game. So if you just do shot stats, you miss that. That didn't even happen. But for those of you who know the game, you know that was actually a massive opportunity. So little things like that. And what it also allowed me to do was to take away a little bit of the outcome. Like everyone's, obviously winning's massively important. But I remember this, we were playing Brighton away in the quarterfinal of the Cup. And it's the best game we've played. We were so good that day. And we lost 1-0 in extra time. I think we hit the post a couple of times, hit the bar, a couple of good boys in the changing room. And this was the first time that my philosophy had been tested. Because in my opinion, your job as a coach is to help build the team, help them become better players, better people. And in terms of the teamwork part, it's to have more high quality opportunities, potentials than the opposition. And we did that day. Like it was very one-sided. And the boys were devastated in the changing room. And I remember just thinking to myself, I said to them, like, winning is very important, and I get that, but you now don't think that we had a good game today when 1 inch, if that ball doesn't hit the post and goes in, now you think we played really well. And then I was like, do you agree? And they were like, yes. Well, how ridiculous is that? 90 minutes of effort of sprinting and tackling and passing and combining. But this is the difference between your happiness and how you assess the game. That's not right. So I was tested in that moment, and I really enjoy it. It's quite freeing. It came from that Chelsea Barca. Do you remember when Chelsea won it and they played Barca and they played Bayern and they got destroyed?
Hamidis.
What? Yeah, right. So I watched that game at work, and what the stats showed on the potentials was that if that game was played 10 times, Chelsea would have lost that 9 times. Now, football's a beautiful sport. Chelsea went on and won it to win it. But from a statistical standpoint and from a coaching standpoint, you'd be happier if you didn't know the result. If you could stop it just before the shot goes in, you'd say, oh, Barcelona and Bayern Munich must have won that game. Look at the opportunities they had. So that, to go off on a tangent, had a lot to do. And then at Brunel, I got to kind of play with that and implement that a little bit in my own way. So I was at Brunel, and then we had 2 very good years.
Make a quick addition. I think I learned that with a coach. Basically, what your point is, I had a coach that used to say to us, worry about performance, don't worry about results. So he said, if we perform well, I don't care. He said, if we're there and we did what our goals were, and like you said, you did a wonderful performance that day, and even if you don't lose, you should have your head up. Because I lost a final on a state for 1-0, and the other team scored in the last 30 seconds, but they parked the bus the whole game, and we couldn't. And then my coach said, heads up. Like, our performance was good. You control performance, but you can't control results sometimes. And I think that's a good point. And the margin for error on the high performance in college, D1, you know how much set pieces can change a game. Sometimes a lot of teams, they just throw a ball there and they go. But I think that was a great point that you mentioned about for coaches, they're going to watch that, about sometimes you focus on the performance, not on the result sometimes.
Yeah, the process, and you have to believe in it. If you don't believe in it, then it gets washed away. Because I've had the flip side where we've won our women. When I was women's coach, we won a game 3-2, and we were terrible, and we didn't deserve to win that game. And I was really upset, and I couldn't even fake joy. It was more like we escaped. Let's dust ourselves down. Let's just get back into training, get to working. So it goes both ways. And then at Brunel, I got to implement that. And then we had 2 very special players, Abu Isa and Priestley, who's just won the Welsh Prem and is playing in the Champions League next season, which is very cool. Now, university football in England is very different. You don't usually play professionally afterwards, generally. That's really, really rare. And I asked these 2 lads to go to a showcase game in December 2016, I suppose. And they both did very well. They both got offered a lot of scholarships from varying different places. Andy Wright is someone I was speaking to at the time, WVU assistant. And he messaged me and he said, do you mind if I bring my friend along to one of the games? He's assistant at University of Charleston.
His birthday today.
It's his birthday, 35 days to Stratford. And he came, and then he wanted to sign, they both wanted to sign Boo and Priestley. And he was in London at the time, and Strats asked if we could get lunch. They just lost the final to Wingate, like I think maybe a week or so before.
I was there.
As well, I've seen the game back. I watched it with Strats, I think, actually, when we were beforehand. And we went for lunch at 12. I think we left at 7. I think we spent 7 hours together just talking. And then he, again, another wonderful coach. You should get a huge amount of praise all the time his name's brought up. And Strats hired my best friend Scott Wells, who I should add, I worked in North Carolina in 2011 with him. He worked in Clinton, which is like an hour and a half near a pig farm. He was coaching, I should say, but it's famous for the big pig farm. So he hired him. So all this kind of like 6-7 years later, Strats just said to me, do you want to come and be part of this, have a position? I know it's not a long-term thing for you to come here, as I was in a relationship at the time. So we went there, and then I think I arrived, and I think it was Charleston were already 3-0 by the time I got there, and I was like, oh, this looks fun. This could be a lot of fun. So that's how I stood out there. So Strats went to recruit a Boo and Priestley, and he ended up with me.
So my question gonna come from, I was wanting to make that question in Baltimore when we met there, but I didn't, is when you arrive at UC, you have the winning culture already established. You know, you already have been there chasing that thing. And of course, when the year you come, they got it, the thing that you're chasing. But let's say the core values, the things that need to be done, the recruiting, everything was already rolling. How was the scenario when you go to Barry? And how can you compare? Because you end up winning the national championship on both in 1 year and 1 year in job. But if you can just compare the environments and the conference and the challenge that you have in difference, how you would compare? Because of course it's 2 national titles, but what was the difference that you can set up?
Obviously, as you know, big coaching staff at Charleston. I mean, you've got Strats, who I would argue is as good as they get, maybe more that I've ever come across. You have Scott, who's an incredible recruiter and a great personal and a good coach. Romain, who's got a UEFA license, who's got a great tactical brain. And then Daniel Smee, who's now the head coach at who maybe envisions all of those things. He is a complete player's coach. He's so smart, and he's going to do a fantastic job at Charleston. So you go from quite a big coaching staff between the ages of about 27 and 33, the 5 of us. And that was just a great experience to be part of, to watch that run. To the attention to detail, the demands that Strats put on us, the detail in terms of coaching. It was just a real quick education for me in those 6 months. And I definitely wouldn't be anywhere near where I am now. I've still got a long way to go if it wasn't for those 6 months in Charleston. And then we got Regional Staff of the Year 2017, and the gentleman handing out the award was Steve McCrath, who was the head coach at Barry and my future boss. So at the convention, we had breakfast the next day, get to know him. And then he had a meeting, and then after breakfast, he was like, can we meet again in an hour afterwards? And I was thinking to myself, this is going pretty well. And then I think I was in Spain recruiting, and then he asked me once I got back to fly down to Florida for an interview, and offered me the job at Barry. Spring break, pretty much spring break. And yeah, it's different. It's a different lifestyle down there too. I mean, it's in Miami. It's a different type of player. The weather makes a massive difference. In Charleston, I think soccer was first in Charleston for everybody. I mean, it's an underrated place to live, I think, but everyone's there for soccer. In Barry, recruiting, and this is my first time recruiting now. Like at Charleston, I was involved in the process of picking some players and that kind of stuff, and I got to watch Strats go into homes with Strats and watch him recruit, and his style, which was, I think, very similar to mine, or I developed off him, I should say. And in Barry, you're selling. Well, I mean, you don't need to sell much. I mean, everyone knows where Miami is. So I found recruiting from that standpoint a lot of fun. A lot of people want to go to Florida. The culture was, yeah. I think the head coach said that I injected some enthusiasm and that kind of, from that standpoint. He was very good with me, and we worked together, and it was a really good relationship for that year. Still is a great relationship. As I said, he's a great man. And he made the players read a book called Legacy, which I did, and there's different parts of that we brought in during the season. But I would say the mood was, it was down a little bit. it was down a little bit, and I think we were able to bring in 10 very good players into that class who immediately impacted. So you have to remember, those 10 players didn't have a bad season the season before. They're getting off the plane in Miami on one of the best surfaces in the country. Like the grass field there is unreal. Real Madrid were there like the week before, United were there the week before that, and PSG were there the week before that, and Bayern Munich before that. It was just ridiculous. And I'm just there watching these sessions. It was a massive perk and a massive recruiting tool. I think one player actually, when Bayern Munich were there, we were recruiting Andreas Volk, and he messaged me and he said, if they're short a player, do any of the college players get to go and play? And I was like, no, that doesn't happen, mate. This is that's not happen.
Hey, he was trying.
I respect him for it. And we recruited. So Martin Lozano is a very interesting story. He was number 26 for LIU Post. Obviously, we played Post in the Elite 8 game. He was injured for that game. And on my second day at Barry, I went to a showcase at Johnson & Wales, and there was this guy filming the showcase. And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, I swear I recognise him, even though I'd never met him because he didn't even travel with the team. And I was like, are you Martin Lozano from number 26 from LIU Post? And his big smile, and he was like, yeah, I am, and I've got a year of eligibility left. So we recruited him, experienced, again, wonderful person. And then he recommended another player, Franchu Greco, Division 2 attacking National Player of the Year in 2018. So quite a good recommendation, and one of the best players I've ever coached. If you've played with anyone who's played with him, and his twin brother Tommy, who was at Seton Hall. So there's a little link there as well. So the head coach at Post ends up at Seton Hall, and one of his former players comes to Barry. We have Fran Greco, who's unbelievable at Barry, and his twin brother Tommy is at Seton Hall. So I probably should have seen it coming, really, but I didn't. So, but yeah, we brought the team together. They were a lovely group. And I just really wanted them to experience what the Charleston lads had. Selfishly, I just wanted them to experience that Final Four, the dinner, the banquet, the flying, and it was flying to the games and the big occasions. And yeah, I did tell Strats we'd see them in the final when I left Charleston. I don't think he believed me, and I'm not really sure I believe myself either. But yeah, it was a great experience. It was a really good season. The head coach was a pleasure to work with.
And how you think? Quick question. How you think was to play against? Because Charleston, let's say, they got tested in the conference, but I would say the conference you have on yours with Lane and plenty of other ones, you got tested really well. So whoever comes down there normally will make to the Final Four. So how was winning the conference? And of course, the record 16-4-3. How you think that prepare you for the nationals compared to Charleston? Because Charleston, you win, but it's different, you know. It's different.
Well, Charleston, I think the key to that season was when we lost to Wesleyan in the conference final. And I remember Strats and Smee especially was very nervous because it was his alma mater, and we had to play them again the week after. I was pretty excited about that game because I thought that we were better than they were. So I was like, okay, right, I'll play them again. Happily play them again. Like they scored a freak goal. Yeah, it's different. We didn't win the conference at Barry. We didn't win the conference championship either at Barry. We finished second, and it was a really unique circumstance. It was senior night, and our captain got sent off because he made a really stupid tackle and got sent off. Then we played a back 3-5-2, and 5 of our 6 centre-backs were injured going into playing Florida Southern. At this point, we were 4th. Lynn and Nova were playing each other, 2nd and 3rd, and they played an hour before us. And we played Southern. So we had to change formation, play a 4-3-3, which we'd not played the entire year. And we're watching the game and checking the score, and it's 0-0 Lynn Nova at halftime. We set pieces 3-0 up, cruising. It was awesome. At halftime, it's overtime at Lynn Nova. It's second, and then they finished 1-1. Sorry, 0-0, and we won, so we jumped both, which allowed us to miss the playoff round, which enabled us to get 4 of our centre backs back. So that was just it was an awesome moment. But in terms of every game's tough. Every single game is tough in that conference. Florida Tech are very good as well. Nova, I would argue, were the best team that we played that year. They absolutely dominated us, and we won 2-1. They absolutely destroyed us. Matt Watts, great coach. And I would say Lynn, that was interesting because obviously, as you know, Charleston beat Lynn in the final in 2017 on penalties. And then we go and play Lynn away, and I'm sat there before the game just thinking, okay, like this is the first familiar experience. We're playing a team that Charleston played last year. It's pretty much the same team. And we were missing 2 of our players, and one of our best players actually broke his leg in that game against Lynn. Beat Lynn 2-0, which was a great feeling. Then we played them in the conference semis and beat them 2-0 again. And then we played them in the Sweet 16, and we beat them on penalties. So satisfying. That was very satisfying.
Yeah, good. That's crazy. Good stories. And now at Seton Hall, what do you think is the difference between D2, D1? Because I know a lot of people ask me that and have other coaches answering. Because I say there is a difference for me. Of course, I'm not saying some D2 teams could play D1, but it's totally different to recruit. The good American players, in my opinion, they're playing D1. But I want to hear from you now as a D1 after a season in there and 2 seasons on D2, going for a second season with Seton Hall. What do you believe is the difference from Division 1, Division 2 men's soccer and NCAA?
The average is better, I'd say. The average Division 1 team is better than the rest, I think. I believe that Charleston's 2017 team is up there as one of the best I've seen, regardless. I would love to have seen Georgetown last year play Charleston's 2017 team. That would be a real match. I really think it'd be very level. Resources is a big one, because you have to remember I've also gone into arguably the second best conference in Division 1, the Big East, which we were ranked last year. So our conference is even more of a war than the last one I was in. I believe the Sunshine State Conference is a Division 1 conference if you're looking at ability. I believe it's a mid-level Division 1 conference if you're going to go on that level, because again, consistently through that whole conference, it's all to do with scholarships. At the end of the day, they've got a good amount of scholarships in that conference, and Florida is an easy pitch to people, so they can really compete. Here, I mean, we have Georgetown, UConn just joined back the conference this year. So this conference is extremely tough, extremely tough. So the average competition level is much higher. You really do fight, and every game is huge. Which I didn't feel. I mean, we did think that at Charleston, but looking back, it's not the same. It's not the same as this. This is, it's a different animal. It's 2 full-time assistants as opposed to 1 at the previous places, some of the places I've been to, which is a different dynamic. The head coach of Seton Hall is a Division 2 guy. I mean, he's got one of the best records in Division 2 soccer. So we're quite similar in that standpoint. We have a lot of respect for Division 2, and some people dismiss it. But both of us being in there, we don't. We know how good some of the Division 2 teams are.
Okay. I don't want to take our time, so I'll go one more question, and then we can wrap it up. The last question would be, I think, I can be wrong, but I think you apply athlete center philosophy to your daily basis. So I want you to talk about if you agree with me and how you think you see yourself as your methodology. Like what do you apply how you apply methodology on your players and those things.
Athletes, 100%. And at the end of the day, it's about relationships. I had a great season in 2017 with Charleston. But you get a little bit of respect and perception that you've won a national championship. to me, I learned so much from Strats and Smee and Scott and Romain, and met yourself and met a lot of wonderful people, and Thomas and we're playing Robin Lepore, we're going to play this year at UConn, and those are the things that they're my favourite things about that season. Like, I love those guys. And the same thing at Barry. Like, my favourite possession I have in my flat is a shirt that was signed by all the players as a gift when I left, and they all wrote different messages. That's my favourite thing I own. And that's more important than winning and losing. Now, winning and losing stretches and stresses relationships. That's all it is, because once the whistle goes, it's just emotion that's left over. Nothing's changed as you as a person. You're still a player. Like, the people we work with are people who play soccer first. They're people first, and you have to give them the attention, and you have to genuinely care. And that's why I love college soccer. I love being in these players' lives at what is a crucial time. They are now men, right? And they've still got a lot of growing to do, and they're going to make some silly decisions along the way. And I want to be a part of it for them, and I want to be there for the rest of their lives. I mean, Coach Lindbergh was best man at one of his players' weddings. I've told that story numerous times because I think it's really relevant. You think about like that, like, he had a player who came in and their relationship was player-coach, and then years later, he's asking his coach to be his best man at his wedding. Like, that's... Now, I'm not saying I want to be best man at my players' weddings, but I just think that's a pretty cool thing. But yeah, and also, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's mutually exclusive. I mean, if there's a good relationship there, then they're more likely to perform. If you put them in a comfortable environment where they feel like they can make mistakes and they feel like they're cared about as a player and their views are heard, it's easier to take criticism from someone, or constructive feedback, if you will, if you have that relationship. If you don't have that relationship, then you lose it, and you're missing a trick, because it's the best part of our job if you don't truly build those relationships. And in terms of applying it, you do it on a daily basis. I mean, how cool is our job? We get to go recruit, meet families, bring them over from different countries potentially, or around America, and then they come and you bring them into this group that you've been mentoring, and then they get to be part of it, and then you get to watch them grow as people and as players. And the ones that want to play professionally afterwards, you want that for them, and you want to help them with that. And sometimes they need some reminding along the way about have they put in the right amount of effort into doing it. I mean, look at Thomas's story. Thomas's story is unbelievable. He's MLS Combine. ESPN did that article on how his stock was rising. And then day 3, didn't have his best game. He met a couple of the MLS guys, didn't he? Didn't get drafted. Then goes to one USL champ team that was meant to be like an individual tryout, turned into like a big team tryout. That didn't go well. Trained really well at another USL team, then in his own words said that he didn't play well in the game, didn't get offered anything, and comes back to Charleston being the Division 2 National Player of the Year, thinking he's going MLS, thinking he's going USL. And I remember he came and coached. Me and Smee had an under-17 team. And we asked him to come along, take his mind off it. To be perfectly honest, to take his mind off it and just kick a ball around and just do a bit of coaching. And not that we were trying to groom him to be a coach, but just have a different experience. And he came out, and then Strats let him play in that game against Riverhounds. And they took him, and Strats put a word in with him, and they took him. And then he played the most minutes in the USL champ that year. And he's still there now. So, like... What a role Thomas went on.
Oh yeah, I'm getting him for one of my podcasts, and the funny story is he's about to not sign with Pittsburgh Riverhounds, and he told me they're playing against a team, and the other team was missing some players, so the coach told Tomas, go play for the other team, and he said he played unbelievable, and then the coach, so he went from being the player that gets to the other team to sign, to show how his mental toughness. Because if the coach was telling me to play for the other, I don't even know if I would take a different way. And I see how he has to be mental tough, and he's like, I'm gonna prove this guy wrong. And he just flipped 0 to 100 on that day. Yeah. And he told me that story, and I was like, whoa. And now he was the guy that plays most seasons. He's going for his, I think, second season with the Riverhounds. Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's
yeah, it was Pitt, I believe.
I
So
never.
he's a very,
I tell him I never could dribble him in practice. I was to tell him go defend other people, man.
yeah, he was
I was
he
like,
was
get out of me. And he gave me one advice that was when I was struggling. He said, Rafa, you just gotta always run 30 minutes. That he said something. He said, if I don't practice every day, I run 30 minutes. So he said, and I think he's still doing that. And he's a crazy guy, like to learn, to see his how he applying, how tough he is. I think he was really good. One of the best players I play and could play six center back, a lot of stuff. Good story. Ali, I don't know if you want to add anything. I appreciate your time. I know it's hard to get you here. I wish you all success. I hope you guys have the season with all these things going on. You're a guy that I appreciate. I have you as a mentor, and I really appreciate you giving me the time to talk today.
my pleasure, mate. Anytime. Thank you for having me.
No problem.